Hello and welcome everyone. Happy afternoon. We're so happy that you're here. By a raise of hands or a slight nod of your head, who here has received an intellectual property violation? Very quick hand, okay.
Just a few.
Yes, or perhaps a VeRO violation? Okay, so you're in the right spot.
This is the place.
Yeah. So I'm a section trail hiker on the Appalachian Trail. Before you go on these multi-week journeys, you gotta double check your map, your supply list, do some research about what you're about to do. And so likewise, we're gonna take you through our IP journey and how it relates to being a seller on eBay. So Anthony, please take us away.
Hi everyone. As Dana said, my name is Anthony Rufo, and I'm an intellectual property attorney at eBay. Welcome everyone here in the room and online. We're really happy to be here with you today. I am, as I said, an intellectual property attorney here at eBay, and I am here to help you navigate the sometimes confusing and befuddling world of intellectual property on eBay. Our goal today is to empower you with the knowledge and resources to sell confidently and to protect your business. So today we are going to be covering what the VeRO program is, why it is important for you to understand it, and most importantly, how to help you succeed with selling on eBay. So I'm going to take some time to talk about the VeRO program, but for my part, I'm going to do that by giving you some information about what intellectual property is. So intellectual property is a blanket term that describes a particular set of intangible rights. Intangible in the sense that you can't touch it. It's not like real property or products. But just because intellectual property is not something you can put your hands on, it is something indeed that can be owned. And when we think about intellectual property, we usually think about it as certain particular sets of rights, and there are different kinds of intellectual property. And so what I'm going to do now is just give you a brief primer of those things. It's a very broad topic. We can't cover it all here today, but just to give you a flavor of what we mean when we talk about intellectual property, I'm going to walk through a few examples of different types. So first, I'm going to talk about trademarks. So what are trademarks? Trademarks are words like brand names or logos, slogans. These are things that are used to distinguish one company's services or products from another company's services and products. Think of it as the identity of a particular product. And that way, when consumers go to buy things, they know if they buy brand X product, it's always coming from the same source. Another kind of intellectual property that is something that is very important to eBay sellers is something called copyright. And copyright protects individual creative expressions of the mind. And what a copyright does, if you create something that it's creative, it gives you the right, literally, to copy it over and over again as much as you want. And copyrights protect things like books, films, art, images, or photographs. Another type of intellectual property is what we call design rights, and are sometimes referred to, especially here in the US, as design patents. And what a design right protects is the actual unique shape or form or design of a physical product. It doesn't necessarily cover the entire product, but whatever on that particular product is unique to its individual design. And finally, another type of intellectual property that is important to sellers on eBay is something called publicity rights, or the right of publicity. And what that means is it's an individual's right to control how their image, their name, their face is used in commercial contexts, is used in commercial advertising, for example. So when we think about personality rights, think about something like a famous celebrity, a sports hero, having the right to decide what, if any, product they might like to endorse. And so those are just 4 types of the intellectual property that you often may encounter yourselves when you're listing things on eBay. Okay, so now we know what intellectual property is. The next question is who owns it? And the reality is that Intellectual property is owned by almost every business or organization in operation. eBay, for example, is what's considered a major brand owner, and eBay has many different kinds of intellectual property. That includes the eBay brand, our famous eBay logo, actually the eBay platform itself that you sell on, also all of the advertising and marketing that eBay does to help you sell the products that you list, just to name a few of the things that eBay owns in terms of intellectual property. Now, there are also other major brand owners, the names of which you will recognize if you hear them, and they might sell electronics, or they might sell apparel or shoes, or they might be a company that sells the products of other companies, think major retailers. So of course there's major brand owners, but the reality is that small and medium-sized businesses also own and have the right to control their intellectual property. So if you think about a small business that does something like designs their own graphic t-shirts, maybe someone in the room sells something like that on eBay. You have a protection in that particular design, you have a copyright, and you get to decide who makes a copy of that for you. You get to decide who makes a copy, you can make a copy, you can license other people to make copies, but you get to control that. And the reality is, and I think what's important for everyone here in the room, is that virtually every eBay seller is an intellectual property owner. So I have a question. How many people in the room have taken images of things they want to sell online and used those images in their listings? Pretty much everybody. All right? That means you own a copyright. You're a copyright owner. Those images that you take are yours to protect. Maybe you have an eBay store. Maybe your eBay store has a unique name, and maybe you've actually gone and designed a logo for your store. If that's the case, you're not only a copyright owner because of the images, you're also a trademark owner. So when we talk about intellectual property and who owns it, it's virtually everyone who's in business, including all of you. Okay, so why does intellectual property matter for eBay sellers? When we think about intellectual property, the people who own it have a legal right, and in many cases actually a responsibility, to protect that intellectual property and to make sure that other people don't misuse it, so that when customers go to look for certain products, they can be assured that they are actually getting what they want from the source they intend to get it from. So in the same way you would not want another seller to take the images that you took, copy them, and use them to sell their products, or in the way you would not want another seller to steal your store name or start using your logo to sell, intellectual property owners of every size, major brand owners down to small businesses, have a legal duty in some instances, and also the legal right to protect their intellectual property. And there are laws around the world that require a platform like eBay to provide a mechanism for rights owners to report what they believe to be infringing content on the platform. And eBay has a responsibility when it gets those reports to review them, and when they seem legitimate, to actually action those intellectual property reports. And in many cases, it might be taking down a listing that was put up because it turns out that something in that listing infringes on someone's intellectual property rights. And this is important because by removing this infringing content from the site, eBay helps to ensure that buyers get the item that they want when they want it without having infringed on someone else's rights. And IP compliance at eBay is really important because it helps our sellers, you and us, to maintain together a trusted platform that keeps buyers coming back. And that's the important thing, and that's what everyone in this room wants. Okay, so eBay's Verified Rights Owner Program, or the VeRO program, is a way that eBay complies with its responsibilities. This is the methodology that we use to have intellectual property rights owners report to us potential infringements on the platform. And now my colleague Dana, who's been waiting patiently, is going to tell you a little bit about VeRO, what it means for you as eBay sellers, and most importantly, how eBay is here to help you.
Thanks, Anthony. So I'm going to get out my trail map. Today I'm going to share with you the resources that eBay has to help you navigate this intellectual property landscape, okay? So you can help sell confidently and ultimately protect your business. We'll make sure to leave time for questions at the end. So we want to first start by saying that we've heard you and we've listened. We know that navigating intellectual property can be complex, and based on your feedback, eBay has a renewed focus on seller education. We've worked hard to make this information readily available and easy to find, so you can learn exactly what you need to maintain safe and compliant listings. So it's critical to understand that the VeRO program is set up for rights owners to report IP violations. Just as critical is that eBay provides seller education on what IP infringement is. It helps build trust with buyers who are looking for authentic items, and it helps prevent listing removals and account restrictions. Ultimately, it allows you to sell with confidence so you can focus on growth. So first you have the verified rights owner page, which explains how to report an IP infringement if you are a rights owner. Then there's the new IP policy page and IP section within Seller Center. So this is where you can find and learn about different types of IP rights, eBay's IP policies, and where you can learn about different types of IP rights. Lastly, there's the VeRO participant profiles, where you can look up a specific brand's IP guidance that they've provided. Knowing these resources exist is one thing, but finding them is another. So let's look into it further. All right, so as Anthony mentioned earlier, every eBay seller is an IP owner. If you've taken photos of the item you sell on the platform, you hold copyright for those images. If you operate an eBay store with a distinctive name or have designed a logo for your store, you possess a trademark as well. So these resources detail how to report listings you may believe may infringe on your IP rights. So at its core, the Verified Rights Owner Program, or VeRO, is about how eBay respects third-party IP rights. It ensures that brands, manufacturers, and rights owners can have control over the use of their IP-protected assets by reporting listings that may infringe on them. We take every report seriously while working to protect both sellers and rights owners. If a listing is reported and found to violate IP rights, it will be removed, and the seller will receive a notification from eBay explaining why your listing was removed, what aspect of the listing may have infringed, and how to revise your listing if possible, so it complies with our policy. So where can you learn more about IP rights? The newly launched IP page within Seller Center is your home base on this journey. So you can learn more about IP, how to maintain compliant listings. So to get there, go to the seller section of eBay's website and select IP within the resources. So this is where you can revisit the basic of Anthony's quick rundown and for simple explanations of copyrights, trademarks, design rights, publicity rights, and more. So it's also key to understand what to include to avoid including in your listing to avoid infringing on IP rights. So this is where we find the guidance on eBay's IP policy, what's allowed and not allowed, and how to understand and interpret the policy.
So, sellers are responsible for ensuring that any item that they list on eBay is authentic and that the item listing itself doesn't infringe on intellectual property rights of others. Now, Dana mentioned earlier that she's a trail hiker. That's not really something that I choose to spend my time doing, but one of my hobbies is baking. I love spending time at home and baking cakes, cookies, pies, what have you. And the reality is that baking is as much of a science as it is an art. And the truth of the matter is that you have to follow the recipe and you have to use the right ingredients. If you want to make a cookie and you use butter, that's fine, but it's going to taste different if you use margarine another time, and it's going to taste different a third time if you decide to use Crisco instead. The point is that if you know what your ingredients are and you know the recipe, and if you follow it correctly, everything's going to turn out okay. So when we talk about our listings here at eBay, think about IP compliance as making sure you choose the right ingredients for the listing that you're baking. So Dana, can you walk us through some tangible examples?
Yes, absolutely. So let's break this down into two simple categories: things you can fix and things you can't. If an item is infringing, such as a counterfeit, any listing that is selling the item is not allowed on eBay. However, if the way an item is listed is infringing, such as using a copyrighted image without consent from the rights owner, you may be able to revise your listing by removing the infringing content.
Okay, so we always have to remember to check our item and what's in our listing. And so we can think about our item as the main ingredient in the recipe, and everything else in the listing is what you have to put in to make everything come out okay.
Yes, exactly. So this is an example of an unauthorized trademark on a t-shirt. When the product itself is infringing, remember, you cannot list it because counterfeits are unlawful.
Yes, so counterfeit items are typically fake or unauthorized copies of real products, and they're often of a lower quality than the authentic product is. These products often mimic the actual products of legitimate companies, and they might actually use the company's brand, logo, or distinct characteristics copied closely, which can result in an infringement. And the reality is that if the item itself is counterfeit, it cannot be relisted on eBay if the item is taken down. Think of this as, I said, the main ingredient in your recipe. If you want to make a chocolate chip cookie and you accidentally put in a cup of salt instead of a cup of sugar, no matter how many times you keep going back to that cup of salt, it's still not going to taste right. So if the item is infringing, if the item is counterfeit, the listing will be taken down, and in that instance, that is something that you cannot relist on the platform.
Exactly. I did that one time in middle school while baking chocolate chip cookies, switching up the sugar from salt. I'll never forget it. So, noted. If you're selling a universally compatible item, don't use a brand name, make, or model name in your description unless the brand actually made your item, as this can infringe on their trademark. So this USB charging point block is an example of a universally compatible product, and it correctly excludes a brand name in the title, item specifics, or the description. All right, so what if the item is specifically designed to be compatible with products of one brand type, like this hydration bladder I've been carrying around eBay open and used on the trail?
Yeah, so in that case, it is actually possible to use a different brand name in your listing, but you need to add compatibility language, such as compatible with, fits, or for before the other brand to make it clear that this is not a product coming from that brand, but is a product that's meant to actually work with that brand. So this is an example of what not to do here, because as you can see, Dana has listed her Camelback, or her hydration pack, and she's listed it as compatible with Camelback, which in fact it is, but she's also listed it as compatible with brand B and brand C when it's not actually compatible with those brands. So you have to make sure when you're making compatibility claims that they're accurate and you only refer to the brands that are actually compatible with the product that you're selling.
Absolutely. So let's walk through this process, because I learned the hard way last week, and now it's hidden. All right, so the email I received from eBay specified why the item was reported and the next steps I can take.
Correct, and in this case, your listing was hidden because you were violating the brand name misuse policy, including more than one brand name when you only should have included one. So until your listing is properly revised, no new buyers will be able to buy your item, and no buyers coming to the platform will be able to search for or find your listing on eBay.
Okay, great. So let's get in compliance. I was able to revise my listing in Seller Hub, so I removed brands B and C from the title.
Correct. And now this is in compliance with eBay's brand name misuse policy, and your listing is now live on the site again.
Awesome. Do you have any tips to maintain IP compliance from the get-go?
Well, that's a really good question, Dana. And the truth of the matter is that many sellers want to make sure from the beginning when they're drafting their listings that they're compliant from the very start. So now we're going to take a minute to talk to you about our VeRO participant profiles, which are there to help you do that. So we encourage intellectual property rights owners who report items through VeRO to create a participant page. And in that participant page, they will explain their individual IP policies and their processes and regulations concerning infringing items. If you have any questions concerning a specific brand that you sell, I would recommend that you go to this page and see if the brand is listed. And you will find hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of brands listed here. Brands like Oakley, Fujifilm, Swarovski, Tommy Hilfiger, Levi Strauss & Company. But one thing that's important to keep in mind is this information is here to provide you clarity on how to list an item in an IP compliant way. This information being given to you by the brand is not there and is not intended to discourage you from listing any items from that brand.
Exactly. So let's say you have 10 pairs of Levi 505s and you decide to sell this pair because you have too many. What would you do in that scenario?
So my action items here are simple. After this workshop, I'm going to take a few minutes and I'm going to go to all the information that Dana shared with you, bookmark the Sellers Center and the IP policy page. I'm going to browse through the VeRO profiles and I'm going to find Levi Strauss and I'm going to figure out what it is that they say about their own intellectual property. And then I'm going to have the proper ingredients and that's when I'm going to go make my listing and bake my cake.
Great. So we want to reiterate that this is not a one and done conversation. It's just the beginning. We're continuously working to refine and improve our seller side guidance around IP. Why? Because your time matters, your business matters, and we're dedicated to making IP enforcement a smoother process for you.